Hey guys, what's up? This is Bales. I'm at DraftKings and gonna break down some of my lineups here and at FanDuel from Week 15. And it was a very weird week for me just because I messed up in an export, and it's I'd done something minor in the past, but this was the first major time that I messed up my lineups. So I'll break down the my top scoring lineup here. In the Wildcat, I actually had one that was higher in a satellite. This is the first satellite I entered to get into the main event next week, which is a $1,500 buy-in, and I cashed two of the three that I entered. All of them were Breeze to Cooks, and yeah, I cashed two of those three despite having Dwayne Washington, Mike Wallace, and Vikings D in all of them, which you'll see is a theme throughout these lineups because I messed up. So I was really high on Breeze to Cooks. I talked about it a bit, but you can see their ownership in the Wildcat 2.9%, 3.1%. I was on Breeze since the beginning of the week. I pretty much knew he was going to be my top quarterback. His splits, home road, where I knew would sort of drive down his ownership, but in all likelihood, it's probably because his home stadium is indoors on turf, and obviously it's going to help an offense. And so when he leaves that, of course, he's going to be worse overall. But if he's in another dome, more or less, which he was in Arizona, on turf, on field turf, then there's no great reason that he should be substantially worse on the road. And Arizona's secondary a bit banged up. Matthew came back, but I did think that was going to turn into a shootout, which it did. So I had a lot of players from that game, luckily. But so he was automatic for me, and then it was a choice of who to pair him with. Michael Thomas was questionable, ended up coming back, and I thought that Cooks just had the best chance to avoid those top two corners, and then they have a third corner who plays outside who ended up playing on Cooks a lot. I forget who it was. I think it was either Bethel or he was out. I forget, but it was a poor corner, and so I thought the matchup was good. So I did have a lot of Cooks and Snead together, and I would have done a lot better, especially on FanDuel, where I had this combination had that Snead touchdown, which was a touchdown, not get reversed. But yeah, so I had Cooks in the majority of lineups, or maybe every Breeze lineup except for one, I think. And so he was my guy, and then sometimes I put Snead in, and only a few with Michael Thomas. But I had a ton of Breeze, and that's really what saved my week from being a potential disaster because of this issue with export, which I guess I'll show you right now. So on DraftKings, what you can do is upload your lineups all at once as a CSV. So on FantasyLabs, you can if you go to the My Lineups tab, I don't have any here, but you can export it, and you'll get a file that looks like this pretty much. It's just a bunch of numbers, and the numbers correspond to names, and it'll upload all of these lineups, and you can enter them into contests. And so you can what I do is I'll download, and I think this might even be one. I'll just create however many lineups I want to put in the Millionaire Maker. And yesterday, I think I had like 100 or something. And I upload those lineups. I'll do a little bit just selecting the player pool or whatever and setting exposure, but nothing really. They're close to dummy lineups. So hopefully they don't have anyone in who's like not playing and things like that, who wouldn't be in models. But it's not a complete randomization, and it is based on my model a little bit, but they're more or less dummy lineups. So I upload those, and you'll see a ton of overlap within 100 lineups, and you have a narrow player pool and whatever. And so I'll do that, and then I will download when I'm ready the all of the entries, which you can do on DK by, if you go to My Lineups, you can click Edit Entries. I'm not going to have any that are live, So right here, and you can click the slate, and you'll get a file that looks like this with all the player names. And those are your lineups. And what you can do, what I do is just copy and paste from the FantasyLabs file into all of the entries that I have here and just re-upload it. And it'll change all of the entries how you want them with the numbers in. What I did was edited some lineups on DK, and so I thought that they were right. And so you can see here I changed the numbers. So the Millionaire Maker lineups ended up being mostly what I wanted. And you can see it. I don't know how. I just messed up. And I messed up. So I had, you can see what happened was I ended up with huge overlap that I didn't want, where with every Breeze Cooks lineup, I had Dwayne Washington, who I wanted in like a couple percent of Millionaire Maker lineups, and he ended up in almost every 300 or 333. And then Mike Wallace, who I didn't want at all, and just I guess was in the player pool. So you can see Mike Wallace, Dwayne Washington, Mike Wallace, Dwayne Washington, and it kind of ruined the Breeze lineups where I would have had really nice upside because I had Breeze, Cooks, LaShawn McCoy in a bunch of lineups that ended up doing well. But you can see all of the McCoy, and then Vikings D, who I did like. I like the Vikings D a lot, but not this much that I would have them in this many lineups. So anyway, learned a big lesson, which is to make sure that you're double checking. This could have been avoided. It was completely my fault. I thought that the lineups were good. I didn't look them over. If I had just looking at this now, I mean, you can see all of the overlap that I didn't want. And so this is a couple of these lineups I did want in here, and I'm just not really sure exactly what happened with them getting mixed up, but it could have been avoided. So yeah, that's what happened. And so I had a ton of Breeze Cooks, which I wanted anyway, and I also had that on FanDuel. So my top lineups were Breeze Cooks. This was my top one on FanDuel. So I guess I'll break down the rest of the DK one first. We had this was my top one, I think, in the Wildcat. Was it? Actually, there's a second. This is my top lineup. Le'Veon. I had Le'Veon, David Johnson, McCoy, and then the cheap running backs I used were Farrow, who did not do well, and I used a little bit of Kenneth Dixon as well. Aldrick Robinson. This was actually a swap because of the the overlap. This was one of the few Breeze Cooks lineups that I had that didn't have Washington. You'll see the others. Washington was in this one. Washington, Mike Wallace, Vikings D. There's just a whole bunch of them. So a couple ended up that they didn't have that, but they still had the same players. So I just swapped to try to get away from that. I didn't have too much Aldrick, but that was one thing that I was able to swap to here. Sneeda talked about. Ebron I did like a lot, and at that ownership especially, ended up not doing well. And Packers D, Matt Barkley hasn't been taking sacks, and he did in this game, but what he's doing instead is basically just throwing the ball up for grabs before he gets sacked. I think they're probably telling him to get the ball out really quickly, which is smart if guys are open and you're accurate, and I don't think either of those things are the case with the Bears. So can probably continue one of those situations where you're generally looking for pressure and sacks, and I think he's going to have to. He's probably, my guess is next week he's going to hold on to the ball a bit longer because he did throw the 3 picks, and but he's a really good quarterback to maximize the chances of a return touchdown again. So be looking at that again next week. And then I think this was at my actual highest scoring lineup, or probably one in the Millionaire Maker. But all 3 of these main events super satellites had that same stack, and they all had Washington, Mike Wallace, and Vikings D. So they're all very, very similar there. And we'll look at my worst lineup. Very bad. In the in the Wildcat. I had tons of Crabtree, almost no Cooper. In this one, I went with Cooper. I think that was a mistake. Also, this wasn't a this lineup again wasn't supposed to be in here. Again, you see the Vikings and Dwayne Washington. This was a lineup. It's not like I didn't want this lineup at all. It was supposed to be in the Millionaire Maker, but yeah, Zeke in the flex. I think I've been thinking a lot about this since last night, and I think I fell into a trap that a lot of people did, which is we have to get Le'Veon, we have to get David Johnson in at all costs, and you could do it, especially on FanDuel. You could do it a lot easier, but you could still do it on DK. And the question is, why was I overemphasizing those guys over Zeke? To a lesser extent, McCoy, but McCoy's getting his goal line touches vultured at times. He's still very playable. I don't think he's a bad play, but I don't think he's on the same level as Zeke. Just guaranteed workload. They're running against everyone. It doesn't matter the opponent. He arguably has the highest touchdown probability of any player in the league almost every game. I think he scored 14 now. So why, with the savings and the lower ownership, we knew he was cheaper, obviously, substantially cheaper. We knew the matchup might not be that bad, but again, I don't think it matters much with him. And we knew he would be lower ownership, so why didn't I have more Zeke? I think that was a mistake on my part. Might be too late too with Zeke probably skyrocketing in ownership next week, I would assume. So yeah, I'll jump over to FanDuel here. This is the monster. This one I didn't have any export problems. I actually created all these lineups by hand. Well, I did them on FantasyLabs, and then I did actually upload them, but I didn't make any changes. So these were actual lineups that I wanted. Top one scored 157. This got 23rd. Breeze Cooks again. One guy you didn't see on DK who I had a lot was Inman. I had him, I think, in 38 or 39% of lineups, and it was supposed to be even a higher percentage of money, but I think he ended up not really on not too many of the $300 or $333 lineups, just because of the mistake. So you can see David Johnson, Zeke here. Didn't have I had less. I had around 45 or 50%, actually more, of David Johnson. He did okay. Zeke also did well, but yeah, I think it was a mistake at the ownership levels to not play Zeke more. I had less than the field here. Inman was a guy who was coming out really, really high in the trends I create on FantasyLabs, and really liked a whole lot of things about him. And I think that this was like, I think he could have had a much bigger game. Here he is 5'4", 68, and I think he had one caught back, and there were some, he had another one where he was sort of running free, could have scored. So I still don't hate that play, even though he didn't do extremely well. DT didn't have a ton of, but he was in this lineup. Just thought they were going to have to throw, and this was an interesting case where I liked both Emmanuel Sanders, who was awful, and Demarius, but didn't like Simeon. And obviously a huge percentage of Simeon's yards are going to come through those guys. So then when sometimes that'll sort of happen, and you have to ask yourself why that's the case. And a lot of times it's because of the price on guys. So Simeon, I'm very unlikely to play Simeon at all. And even though he's cheap, but the other guys I thought were too cheap. So then, especially in a tournament, you're not as concerned about that value, and you really need to think, well, is this guy in a really good spot? Do I like him sort of being salary agnostic? Do I still like this player? And probably not as much on those guys. And so you can fall into this trap where you think a guy is likely to do well because he's a value, but his FanDuel or DraftKings salary is completely irrelevant to how he's going to perform on the field. And I think that's a big trap that people fall into a lot. And I do it as well, and might have done it here. Ladarius Green I had limited exposure to him, but I still wanted some. I thought he was a really hard player to figure out. So the first game that they said they were going to get him the ball more, they did, and he had like 12 targets or whatever. And then last week they played the Bills, and he was on the field I think 29 snaps. He wasn't on the field, but they were also, Le'Veon went crazy, and they also were up big. So then it was a little bit uncertain. Is this a game script or what is it? And when he was on the field, he was still targeted 6 times. So there was some optimism that, well, he wasn't on the field, but if in a game where he's going to be on the field more and they're passing more, he's going to be targeted a lot. And I'm not sure. I'm still not sure what to think. He had nothing early and then ended up with 472. Sort of, I think it was like a little bit, not garbage time, but at the end of the game. And, that's part of predicting that as part of fantasy. So he's going to be a really pivotal player, I think, to look at in week 16 that not completely sure what to do with, because generally you want to avoid those guys who aren't on the field, but he's getting targeted so much. So I'm not sure who the Steelers play in let's check really quick in week 16 if they play the Ravens. So yeah, I don't know that's a dream matchup per se, but maybe it's fine. Aguayo I've been playing just because no one plays him, because they're kicking field goals. He's indoors on a decent offense. So people just aren't playing him because he missed so many early, but seems to be doing okay now, and I'll probably continue to play him next week depending where they are. And then Ravens D was just I'm not exactly sure why they didn't do extremely well against the Eagles. Only 3 points. I didn't like them as much as some other defenses. Vikings were my top defense by far. But there's a combination of spread. Wentz not taking a whole bunch of sacks, but sometimes throwing some bad passes when they get in bad situations, which he just didn't do here. So, and then we'll look at my worst lineup in this. So I guess I had 13 and 6 cashed. Worst lineup, 95, not good at all. Matt Ryan, Tevin Coleman, Gabriel, Stack. I had way less Gabriel than the field. I played Coleman a bit more, hoping that Devontae Freeman was, not hoping, but with the thought that he might be a little bit more injured than people thought. And Peter, CSU Ram in the FanDuel Championship, played Freeman, and he went nuts. So, that was probably, it was just sort of rolling the dice on my part, hoping that Freeman was maybe not going to be on the field all that much. Shady, who I talked about, Stephon Diggs was really surprising. Obviously, he's a better play on DraftKings full point PPR, all other things considered, but he's also generally a lot higher owned. And one thing that I've noticed on FanDuel is that these volume pass catchers, and this could be a cash strategy more so, well, I guess not, but the volume pass catchers are actually under-owned. I think it goes too far with guys like Edelman, not as much anymore, but Stephon Diggs and Jarvis Landry and those guys, pass catching backs. You still get a half a point per reception. Those receptions aren't completely worthless like in a standard league, and their ownership oftentimes will plummet, and it's also, I think, lots of times priced into their salaries already. So the ownership shouldn't plummet. The argument against it would be, well, they don't have as much upside. They're not as tournament worthy, but lots of times I think that they still are, and just didn't envision this game from Diggs. Eifert was a player who I was overpriced, I think. and I knew I would be getting low ownership for it. But in hindsight, I think this was the worst play that I made, certainly in this lineup. Maybe not overall, but made so many so many mistakes, hard to count them all. Uh, but yeah, I think that in trying to overpay for a player, I my thought was there's only so many tight ends who can go off and like really help you win, especially with Gronk out, like, and the Seahawks already having played, so Graham not in the slate, Olsen playing tomorrow, or it's actually tonight, but tomorrow from yesterday's perspective, Monday night. He that with him out there, they're really it was really bare at tight end, and so there's only a couple guys, Eifert and guys like that can really take over. You're not going to have that from a guy like Witten or some of those guys who are values maybe, but are tough to win a tournament with. And those are thinking with Ladarius Green too, just so athletic and in a good offense. Like he could potentially take over. So those are the tight ends I'm looking for. So that's why I overpaid. But I think that I could have done that in a smarter way here. Eifert just too expensive. You can even see $1,600 more expensive than Ladarius. I just don't think it was a good play. Dan Bailey, just indoors on a good offense with a high total. There wasn't too much thought that went into that. And lastly, the Vikings. Like I said, I like the Vikings a lot. I told people I like the Vikings and got a lot, probably the most tweets I ever got of people being mad at me for suggesting someone. One thing that you can try is creating your own lineups and not being mad at someone for trying to give advice. But I like the Vikings because I believe they have the highest sack rate on a per snap basis in the league. Andrew Luck, I think, fourth highest sacks taken, and there's always some risk playing Andrew Luck that they get up and he's just like in the groove, and then lots of times he's not, and they get down and he takes a ton of sacks and does some things that aren't that smart. So it didn't work out here. And a lot of these plays, you've noticed I look back on, was this smart? Some of them I think weren't. Eifert, I think, was not. Some other plays, obviously, exporting dummy lineups, not smart. A few other plays that I had, you look back and say, well, this probably wasn't the smartest play. But I think that the Vikings, I would do that again. I think I think all the reasoning was there. I can't find a great reason to not do that again. I think people don't want to play players against Andrew Luck a lot. And you know what might be interesting if we look at, I know that the Vikings were super high in the FanDuel championship. So this is the 300. They were 16%. In the FanDuel championship, they were very, very high. I think like 40%. And so if you look at the differences in ownership across different slates, you'll see that they were, I think, just substantially higher stakes, which suggests that sharper players were probably on them. So, you always look back. They did do so poorly that I think it would be dumb to just say, well, that's variance. So you look at it, and everything that I can think about why I would pick a defense and everything I think was I would do it again. So I think the line of reasoning that puts you on a team like the Vikings also gets you on some defenses that'll perform well the majority of the time. So okay, that's about it. And good luck in week 16.